Good evening and welcome to this edition of On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara, and my guest tonight is the former president of the Forum for Democratic Change and former presidential candidate, retired Colonel Dr. Kiza Besigye. Dr. Besigye, thank you very much for responding to our invitation. A warm welcome to you, and you're on the spot tonight.
Thank you very much, Patrick. It's always a great pleasure to be out here and talking to the on-the-spot viewers.
Let me begin with something that is recent, and I know you are not now a party president, and I suppose you even do not hold a position in FDC, but because you are a founder member and you are an elder in FDC and a former party president, perhaps these issues you can respond to them. And I'm asking about the iPod summit that happened a couple of days ago. FDC participated in everything, in the council meetings all. When they reach the summit, FDC decides to boycott. What do you think are your party leaders and colleagues trying to achieve by boycotting a summit?
Well, I think you, in your preamble, indeed indicated that I cannot be a spokesperson of the Forum for Democratic Change. I am not even privy to the discussions that take place in the party, because I'm not in any of the decision-making organs. And you're asking a specific question why they did not attend that particular summit meeting.
Because as a former party president, as a former presidential candidate, you too could have asked them why.
Yes, I could, but what I'm simply saying is that you're asking the wrong person, and to that extent being unfair to both me and to the party, because I'm sure they have very good reasons why they did not attend, which they are quite competent to articulate. And I think it would be fair enough to invite them to do so. But I can offer you my views, if you like, on dialogue generally. Dialogue between a regime like we have. You see, there is really a basic misunderstanding now existing very clearly in our politics about what it is we are dealing with. You see, some people think that we are dealing with an elected government in a democratic system, which may not be performing well or functioning well, which may have some weaknesses, but there is a democratic process that is going on, and there is an elected government, and there is government party and opposition parties. Now, there are people who are of that thinking. I am not one of them. My understanding, and of course which is also shared by many, is that there is no democratic process, democratic system, democratic institutions. There is no ruling party and opposition parties. What we have is simply a military regime, very thinly clothed as a political organization, and which came to power by force of arms, which has maintained the power by force of arms, and that there is a struggle for the people of Uganda to regain power and influence in the country. Now, these are two very distinct points of view. And your question of dialogue, meaning dialogue between the ruling party and maybe opposition parties or parties in a democratic process, is something that is, a fallacy.
You know what intrigues me and perhaps many other people in Uganda is that you decide to participate in every step as IPOD, FDC, and every step of IPOD, the council meetings and others. When you reach the level of the summit, then you boycott. And yet,
Well,
if your members and the colleagues have grievances, they should have tabled them in that summit. You
well,
should speak truth to
well,
power
well, you
and go
see,
all the
where
way.
you see again, you are simply being completely unfair to interrogate the party in its substance. If this is there, they are very competent leaders. You can interrogate them in their presence. They are not here to answer your question. I'm sure they have very good reasons, which they must, I believe, would have articulated even in the meetings where they were in attendance, including telling them that they would not go all the way to the summit. So I would not want to articulate those on their behalf. If you ask me, my view is that that iPod is a non-starter. It will never achieve what it was set, what they believe it could achieve, that it can structure a political process to make it fairer,
So have you
inclusive.
told them from the very beginning to even stop to engage because they are there, they are not there? I mean, there's a lack of clarity on where they stand.
Well, again,
yes, I know, but
again,
you see, you are a founder member. You are a respectable leader of FDC. In fact, without you, I suppose even FDC could actually struggle. It has struggled.
Well, you see, I have told you that FDC is a very competent party.
It is, yes.
It has a competent leadership. It is indeed participating in those processes competently. Where they don't, they have, I am sure, very good reasons for not doing so, which you can get from them. You are simply interrogating the wrong person over a particular issue. If you want issues on dialogue in general, I have very good issues. I mean, views about dialogue in general. I think
this seems to be like the backbone of FDC, the party you help with your colleagues to found, the backbone of intolerance, that you do not want to engage, that you don't want discussion, you don't want to have a dialogue. It's a backbone that you left. It's still there.
No. Of course, if it was, then it would not even be participating in what you are talking about. But let me tell you that actually, the position I have arrived at has a history. When I was a leader of FDC, there were attempts at dialogue. In fact, after the election of 2011, there was a whole process of attempting to have dialogue, which was led by none other than a person who is still, I think, trying to engage in some kind of a dialogue process, Justice Ogola. In that dialogue process, we structured what were the prerequisites of a meaningful dialogue. And we especially zeroed on 4 things. One, that before any such dialogue would be of any meaning, there should be a concurrence on what agenda it should be discussing. Now, if, for example, FDC did not agree on the agenda of the summit, it makes sense not to attend the summit. You must have, and I know that one of the things that has indeed been touchy has been the agenda. What is it? What is the summit of the iPod going to discuss? What is the agenda? I know that many in the FDC have been very clear, of the clear mind, that the agenda of dialogue in Uganda now that makes sense is only one: transition from military rule to a democratic system. We should discuss that as the agenda. But if you are going to talk, if you decide that you are going to talk about improving Public Order Management Act, a law, when you know that there is no rule of law, even me, I wouldn't attend. It's ridiculous to go and discuss.
But if you make yourself absent at the theater of action, you know, where you will have an opportunity to speak truth to power, where you can even present some of these things directly to the person whom you think.
Come on, Patrick. Absence is a form of engagement. Boycott is a form of engagement. Don't think that engagement is only when you are at the table. When you are not at the table, you also make a statement. In fact, iPod cannot sit as iPod in the presence of FDC.
In the absence.
In the absence of FDC. It can't. So what they do when you see them on TV and so on is just a gossip. It's not iPod summit.
You know what?
iPod summit.
That is really challenging the importance, the integrity, or even the understanding of your other opposition leaders that when they sit and you're not there, then they're nothing. How can you say something like that?
I haven't said that they are not nothing.
Because you are saying,
but they are not in an iPod summit. Because an iPod summit is defined by the iPod Memorandum of Understanding that establishes iPod. And an iPod summit makes decisions by consensus of all. So in the absence of one, you cannot make a decision of iPod. That is what was agreed by all. So if FDC removes itself, it means that it is saying iPod should not proceed.
So how do you think other members of the opposition party are going to view you, or they are going to feel when you decide to participate at everything but leave the summit? I mean, and yet they have spare time to do this.
You see, I have told you that FDC is there to give you reasons. If you want to know why they participated at other places and not the summit, kindly invite them. I have even gone a step further to speculate what reason, one of the reasons why they may not be there, is that if you don't agree on how the summit is going to be conducted, even if you have been participating in others, if you haven't agreed on what the summit is going to do, there is no reason why you should go into it. Okay, and one of the things which I'm
about to leave that subject,
and I have told you, I've told you that all the parties agreed on a structured dialogue involving four things: agreeing on agenda, agreeing on who should be on the table, agreeing on the moderation of the dialogue, who moderates the dialogue, agreeing on how the outcomes of the dialogue will be implemented. That these must be agreed upon before the dialogue itself. So if they are not agreed upon, then the dialogue itself cannot take place. But I have also, I have been observing that indeed FDC has been singled out for mistreatment by the junta that you are talking about dialoguing with. I don't think that if you have been following what has been going on, that FDC is not allowed to hold any party meeting, is not allowed to hold a public meeting, even including now some of us not being allowed to hold a radio program. And I must say, this is one of the places where we can talk from only. I've tried to be, as you know, on up-country radios, and the longest I go is 10 minutes before the gunmen arrive to pull me out of the station. All being done with impunity. Not because of the law, because there is any law they are using, absolutely none. There is no law that stops any citizen going on a radio station and talking.
And for that matter, let's leave the issues of iPod and we get into that discussion. Because
if you have a state of impunity, a state of the absence of the rule of law, and you want, like I have seen indeed some people who want just to talk about maybe how to amend the law, how to amend this. Even me, if I was in FDC, I would find it very difficult to be part of such an engagement.
Though Well, maybe the very last issue I could raise on iPod. I understand the money to be given to the parties was increased from 10 billion to 35 billion. I wonder if your colleagues now will also boycott the money.
Well, the money is not allocated by iPod. This is taxpayers' money, which is budgeted by Parliament. It's not iPod that.
Yeah, that pronouncement was made at iPod.
But this is the whole misuse of
yes,
power.
but
You see, budgeting, prioritization of national resources and how they should be, must be a function of Parliament. And you see, that's the whole thing, because Mr. Museveni has appropriated all power in the country unto himself. He's the one who says, now you take this. You saw him here saying, I increased the salary of Musisi, but I gave her a lot of money, but she didn't function. You know, he's the one who determines everything, which is what must fundamentally change. And so, if there is a law for funding political parties, and I think it's a good law that political parties are public institutions, they should be accountable to the public. And that's why it should not be an argument for one to say, I'm in this political party, you are not a member of our political party, you shouldn't care what is going on in my political party. No, political parties are public institutions. And they do a lot of work for the common good, grooming leaders, articulating policies that can run the country, and therefore they should have public funding, in my view. But that should not be a matter that is negotiated between the beneficiaries.
I want to change gears now and look into an issue that has been very close to your heart, I think, because you've been moving around the country, meeting your party members and other people. But you've also had, you've also been on a collusion course with the police and the army in Kaliro, in Soroti. What are you exactly doing when you're moving around the country?
Well, again, I must refer you to the background of what it is we are trying to solve. We are trying to solve a problem that has remained unsolved since Uganda was created as a country. Uganda became a country in the late 19th century, around the 1890. It was not formed by us, Ugandans. It was formed after destroying the institutions and nations that were existing within the current boundaries of Uganda by foreign armed forces. Therefore,
we are a creation of the Europeans.
Yes,
that sat somewhere in the Berlin.
Yes. And the effect of that was that power of what was citizens of our nations then was taken away and controlled by those who had the coercive forces, the military forces, Captain Lugard and his forces. That power that was taken away from us has never returned. We have been under gun rule from then up to now. That is why, first of all, the 70 years of British rule, there was no contestation. They held the power and did whatever they wanted. But since 1962, when there was an idea that there was independence, power was not transferred from the British administration, governors, to the people of Uganda. It was transferred from the British to those the new controllers of the guns in Uganda. And that is why, since 1962, we have never had a leader peacefully hand over power to another leader. Every leader has had to be bombed out of office, and whoever comes is brought by guns. So guns hold power. The latest gunmen have been in office for now, this is the 34th year. So the struggle we are engaged in, what you see me moving around doing, is not to change the leaders. It is to change the people, so that our people can have the capacity, the competence to change their leaders. Because unless we change people and empower people, and people are now able to, whether you have guns or not, to say you cannot go on like that, this must change, then we will continue in the disastrous path that we have had. The notion that people get a leadership they deserve is very true. If people are powerless, as ours are, then whoever indeed controls guns will manage the country the way they want. And that is what we have now. So what we are doing when you see me going around the country, it's a process of empowering our people, the citizens of this country, to take charge of their destiny and be organized and be able to tell and force those with the guns to know that people have greater power.
You have described the problem, you have made a good diagnosis, but are you really giving the right prescription? Are you really making change? Are the people buying this idea? Are you opening up their eyes? Because wherever you've gone, I have seen actually, in most cases, you have not even been allowed to meet the people. So your program
Well,
or your idea
it's
is
a struggle. It's a struggle because indeed, the few people who dominate the many using guns will do everything in their power to make sure that people are not conscientized, that people indeed are not awakened, are not given the competencies to organize and act together to reassert their will in the country. That is the very reason why, indeed, I must be pulled out of radio stations so that that message does not go. That's why we cannot hold meetings, so that we don't communicate to the people. That is why, and which is, sometimes people have been indeed asking the question, why do you go to elections when you know that elections in and of themselves are not going to free people from the gunmen who are organizing the elections anyway? We use every opportunity, and election is a good opportunity because the military rulers want indeed to create the facade, the impression that there is some democratic process. That's why they organize elections, not so that people may express themselves, but so that they may create an impression. When they do so, during that brief moment, they want the international cameras to be here and to say there was an election organized. We use it effectively. That's why we don't boycott elections. We go in and
what I know,
people.
you are always the first person to say you're not going to participate.
Well, so
before we know it, you're picking nomination papers, Dr. Besigye.
So let me first of all,
that has been your modus operandi.
So let me first tell you, you asked me what am I moving around doing. So the struggle is first of all to conscientize people, to know the captive state in which they are, in which they have existed all these years, to know what they need to do to change that situation. And you asked, is it changing? I can tell you without any fear of contradiction that it is. You may have seen the difference between the election 2016 and previous elections. Right from the time I was nominated in Nambole until the end of the election, I moved around the whole country with hundreds, thousands of people coming forth and giving us money, giving us food and all other kinds of things. Whereas Mr. Museveni went around the country dishing out money. And some of the money he was dishing out, they were bringing to us. Why? Why do you think there was that dynamic? Recently, in the election in Rukunjiri, you saw the billions that were transported there. Small groups, 100 million, 50 million, I don't know what, borders, kamunyes, what. And you saw when we went, how the people they gave money filed giving us some of the money.
Have you been making accountability of the money the people of Uganda are giving you?
And indeed, on top of that, resisting all the rigging mechanisms that were there and defeating the money and whoever brought them. So what I'm trying to say is that there definitely has been a lot going on in terms of people now determining that they must have their country as their country, and that those who have been ruling them the way they want must become their servants.
All right, hold on to your point there, retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guest tonight is retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye. Okay, I think very briefly still on that point that we had before we took a break, and your travels across the country, you are trying to conscientize the Ugandan population to understand that maybe they have power within themselves to make changes, and yet you are blocked to meet the people, but you seem to suggest that yes, the change is happening amongst the population. I wonder how you reach that conclusion, yet really you have not been given or allowed to meet and interface with the people.
Yeah, like I told you, a struggle is a duel. There are people trying to achieve to counter what you are trying to do, and that's what has been going on. But you see, we don't just rely on one avenue. We also use every possible avenue to get our message across. For example, we tape messages and send them on memory cards, on social media platforms, and so on, and the message will go, even where you are not, even where the radio has been, even where you've been pulled out of the radio. We go to churches and talk from there, to funerals, to all kinds, whatever opportunity you have, we use it to communicate our message. And this struggle for really self-determination, for people to decide what happens in the country, is one that has sometimes made progress and then been pushed backwards. But I am almost confident, I'm confident that in a very short time, we shall have what has never, you see, when Mr. Museveni was saying at Parliament there was a fundamental change, now I'm sure even if he himself listened to what he said, he would laugh at himself. Because, they were just soldiers taking over from other soldiers. He said it's not a mere change of guards. That's the typical mere change of guards. What the struggle that is going on is a struggle to take power from armed people when we ourselves are not armed. And I think you have seen where even that has happened. There are many places where, they bring all these tear gas, and the people are sat their will and remain there, they tear gas until the armed people come down and people get what they want. And so, whoever is not seeing the changes within the population, in fact, the people of Uganda are very discerning, are very focused on what they want. The biggest problem that we are still remaining with are the elites, yourselves. Because you see, the elite's interests in many ways are at variance with the interests of the population.
And why is that?
Self-interest. Because you can negotiate. You are maybe a media person, you can negotiate with the junta, they give you some benefits, and you serve them, you give them what they want, they give you what you want. You go and buy a big vehicle, you live in a good house, and you are living a privileged life.
So that's what
serving,
you think the elite of Uganda are doing?
That's the biggest problem. The elites actually, and
so according to you, the elite are more or less like a sellout, or they have probably sold their soul to.
Yeah, the greatest majority, unfortunately, that is the situation.
How do you come
Because,
to that conclusion?
I mean, look at Parliament, for example. And I'm talking at Parliament as a whole, because sometimes people think we are talking about, again, who are confused, thinking that we are talking about government party and opposition party. No, we are talking about all these elites, padding their nests when everybody else is hurting, and doing what the junta wants. For a decision to be taken in Parliament, they distribute money. Who doesn't know that? And they take decisions against their own people. So that is that, and that permeates all over in the media, in the academia. You find people at Makerere, providing all kinds of arguments that clothe the junta in all kinds of glorious ways when they know the truth. So the population, I can tell you, is very alert, knows the problem, and that's why some people think that they can even confuse them during times of voting. People are not bothered about FDC, DP, I don't know what. No. They are looking for what will cause real change in their lives. And that's why whether they are FDC, whether they are DP, at the time of the election, they all, see what will give them the best chance, and all of them go there. Doesn't matter which party they were subscribing. Because people know. So people, even who talk about the opposition is divided, and again, opposition, of course, thinking that there is, but the leaders of the oppressed are divided. The oppressed people are not divided. Leaders of the oppressed, again, for all kinds of interests, will be divided. But the people are united. And you see, that's why, for me, I feel total satisfaction if I spend my day empowering those people. Because it is those people that will make the change, whether we are there or not. And that is the change that will be irreversible. If we, the elites, today, like in those iPods or whatever, conspired even to create some change of leader, it will not change the system that is tilted against the people. You see, we have a system that is totally tilted against the people. And that's why, some people are saying Uganda is growing. It is industrializing. It is this. But for who is it doing all that? That is happening at the same time you have slavery going on. People actually being sold in slavery from Uganda, while people are driving huge vehicles.
So
we are talking about all these
Dr.
things.
Besigye, on the journey to 2021 general elections, I've heard you say you're actually not even focusing on the election. Probably you suggesting you don't want even to be on the ballot paper. But you have other colleagues, the forces of change, who are committed, and they think they can change the regime or get into power through election. So those conflicting interests, how are you working together? And because those strategies seem never to meet at all.
You see, fortunately, as I have explained, whatever we are doing it ostensibly in the public good, in the interest of the people of Uganda. And I've told you, The people, we may be divided ourselves in what we think and what we say and what we would like to see happening for different reasons. But these oppressed people, all these jobless youth, all these people who can't access health care, all these people who have not taken their children back to school now, some are killing themselves and so on, all these people who are desperate for change, I've told you that they are more discerning and their interest is one. They have a common interest for them.
Yes, but
they are not, they are not negotiating.
You, the leaders in the forces of change, are actually confusing them because your messages are conflicting.
Yes, but I'm telling you that they are not as stupid as some people think, that they will not discern between what I am saying, what you are saying, and what somebody else is saying. And if they were stupid, then they would not be the chooser. We would not go to them in elections. Because the reason we go to them with manifestos is to tell them what we want or to do for them, and they listen and should be able to say, I think this one has the best choice. So even now, in the noise that we are making, they are listening.
Is it a good strategy at this time for you to be having, to be conflicting in approaches, really? Isn't that a weakness on your side as forces of change?
No, not at all. You see, that is normal.
To conflict is normal.
Even conflict is normal.
When you're supposed to be allies.
You see, and from conflicting positions, you can harmonize them into more cohesive processes. So, even like when there was a war here to change the government that changed in 1986, there were many different fighting groups. They did not believe the same thing. It did not stop that war ending. Because you see, humans are inherently different, one from another. Even if you are twins, you find each one thinks their own way. And I've told you that here, whatever we are saying is being processed by the people. And the people will start saying, no, what is being said here is what we think will help us. And they will start supporting that. And whoever is talking something that is irrelevant to them will become irrelevant. And that's how positions are harmonized. So, for example, now, some people were creating an impression that we who think that we shall cause change by struggle, that we want to boycott elections, we don't want to have anything to do with elections. Increasingly, that has been understood that that's not the case, but that elections on their own will not take away the junta. And why? Let me tell you. Because you cannot vote guns out. You have seen, before every election, the alignment of guns. Before the last election, you saw the crime preventers. Mobilized, trained, what? You saw it. You saw even people who are supposed to be, and this is not only here, even in the neighboring countries, you've seen.
Yeah, but that election, you are convinced you won that election.
Yes, but did it give me power? So the question is not, it's not the first one we won. We have been winning these elections. But does it cause change of power? So, or even be announced? Because even though I have the results that we defeated him, it's not me who was announced. I am being charged for treason, even today, for declaring myself the winner. I have continuously said on all public fora that it is true. I declared myself a winner. So that treason case should be brought. And I am hanged if I don't produce evidence that I won. So, but the question is, The courts will not hand over that power to you. The Electoral Commission will not hand over that power to you. Now, since Mr. Museveni indeed using the forces, because I was under illegal detention, don't forget, since he took over and was sworn in by his institutions, he has since already appointed a new electoral commission to run his other election. There is already a new electoral commission. The violence you are seeing already being marshaled up is for the election. This is what we are involved. What we are seeing is election violence. Election violence does not only come when there is campaigning. It starts now. I told you the crime preventers of the other day. I told there were the special police constables of the other time. The forces that are organized already today, we have LOD, is it LODUs, the ones who have already been recruited, who are already marauding around. So the election violence, the militarization of what would be democratic processes is already underway. In the last election, and you see these things are very consistent. Have you ever asked yourself what happened to Aronda, General Aronda? Do you know when he died? Do you know why he was appointed from the army in violation of the law to become the head of registration of voters here? Because that's what he was, by registering citizens who would all become, and the voters register was illegally.
I think you're about to give us an expose.
The voters register was illegally ditched. Illegally, we had a new voters register illegally. This was even articulated in court. You have, and it's not only here. All these things happen. In fact, you should be starting to think who now has been placed in a position that may lead to his death, and so on and so forth. So we are talking about very serious problems here that cannot be simply, gossiped around that, we will go to the election. And the regime has invested heavily in propaganda of saying, the reason we actually haven't taken power is because we haven't created a good manifesto that paints a good picture for what Uganda will be. We have not explained our alternative policy programs. We have not built party structures to protect the votes. We have not. This is where we need to focus, and so on and so forth. And attract people into the hangman's room. So what we are saying is, we shall participate in elections, but we shall build capacity within Ugandans to subdue the military guns.
You want a decisive victory on the ballot?
So that it's not a ballot. I've told you that what we want to achieve.
What do you mean to subdue?
Is subordination of the guns to civilian authority. That's what has never happened since 1890. We have never subordinated the guns to civilian authority. That's why no leader has changed and handed over to another. It's only guns that hand over power to fellow guns, not ordinary people. So this is what is going to happen. The revolution is going to happen, I hope, by the grace of God, in your presence when you are still alive. Because all ingredients for the people of Uganda to regain influence in their country are in place.
Dr. Besigye, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'll be opening the lines. You'll see the numbers on the screen. You can call us and be precise and concise, ask a question you may be having for Dr. Besigye, or tell us what you think as we move towards 2021. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye. And in this segment, I'll be opening the lines. You'll see the numbers on the screen. Please, you can dial them and be precise and concise. If you have a question, you ask. If there's something you want to tell us, you make it in very brief so that we can have many people participate in this program. We'll be waiting for your calls. But let me, last month you signed, understand, a memorandum of understanding with the leader of the People Power, the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi. What is the intention of this pact? And how are you working with him?
Well, again, the intention and whatever it was about was very clearly stipulated in that small document. The idea is exactly as I have been stating, that all of us who want to regain influence and power in the country from those who captured the state by force of arms, that we need to pull together, to work together, to focus on that task at all times. Not just because some people say, you unite and find a candidate. No, we must unite and fight together at all times, because change doesn't have to come through an election period. And so we agreed that we shall work together to resist in all forms available to us the violation of the rights that are going on, which is the most challenging thing that we meet in this whole political process, that we fight together to push back, to gain our rights, to eventually gain the influence and control of the country.
There are those who are saying that really, that all of you who have been in the opposition for some time, that really you have to wake up and smell the coffee. There's a new kid on the block, and he's the one who probably...
Yes, and those are the people that I described to you earlier, who totally misconceive what the problem is and how it will go away. Who think maybe the struggle is to look for a leader. No. I've told you that the struggle is to look for the country that has not been under our control, where all our resources are controlled by gunmen and not the people of Uganda, which is the reason why this most gifted country harbors the most poor people, most miserable people, which should not happen. So we want, that is the struggle at hand, to regain control over the country. And it's a struggle, it's a war. We are at war to defeat those who are controlling the country by force. If you are at war, you need all people coming together, each one doing what they can till this thing ends. Now, we shall come to a situation where we shall get into choosing a leader. In fact, I laughed this morning. I had one of the people involved in the opposition, or whatever you call opposition politics, saying that, we must, as we struggle, know what each one will get. Who will take the leg of the animal? Who will take the intestines? Who will, this is the, I think the...
You're preparing for the booty.
Yeah, this is, I think, it was the most vivid expression of misunderstanding of what is going on. But some people are that inclined. They think they are fighting for some spoils that they will divide amongst themselves. Now, what we are fighting for is the control, empowering people to regain control of the country. And we have been very clear that once that happens, there must be a transition period in which that power now is rationalized on how it will be managed and distributed through making a new constitution, through rebuilding institutions that are responsive to the people, through a truth-telling, justice and reconciliation process, and eventually through a free and fair election. Now, in that transition period, apart from building state institutions, it will be the opportune time to build democratic institutions, including political parties. Because political parties can, frankly, not be built in earnest under an environment like we have today of gross abuse of rights, of lack of the rule of law, of, corrupt, terribly corrupt system, pervasive corruption, and so on. So these are processes that will come during the transition. Then we shall choose leaders. So right now, our cooperation, and I hope indeed that all those who are struggling will appreciate this point, that let's build the front to regain influence. And if we want to get into an election, if we go into an election and we want to get candidates, even it should be understood, and I have absolutely no problem, supporting any other candidate, contrary to what people say out there, that, I cannot support any other candidate. I am possibly the only party leader that has given up leadership of a party when my term is there. I have, all kinds of credentials around not seeking personal leadership or power. But
so does that mean you are not even intending
so
to
the
be
point,
on,
the point,
does that mean, Dr.
the
Besigye,
point
that
I'm
you're
making,
not intending to be on the ballot?
The point I am making is, it doesn't matter who is on the ballot. If we are still in this struggle before the free and fair elections, it doesn't matter. That is not what is going to cause change. It is the forces that we build that will cause change, regardless of who is on the ballot. Because as I have told you, I have won elections. It didn't cause change. So it's not just winning elections that will cause change. It is the forces that we would have built that can overwhelm those who use the whole array of means to subdue the voices of the people, which is what we should build now. And once we have built those forces, it even makes it difficult to actually rig an election. And let me tell you, if we had processes that were decent, here, even if there were many candidates and they divided the votes, nobody would be declared the president until a second round, when all the others would be eliminated. And you have only 2 candidates, then all the others would congregate. So the problem is not candidates. The problem is that we don't have an election. Because I've told you, that the whole system, the way it's corrupted. Look at the courts. Today we have 100% of all judges put in place by Mr. Museveni. 100%. And recently there was a test of the age limit case. I think you saw how it went. It's preparation for what is going to come.
But
So
that's how the constitution is. That's how the laws are saying. So they are legally there, appointed. The constitution gives them powers to do so.
Yes, I have not said they are not legally there, but they are appointed by people that have not been empowered by the population. Mr. Museveni did not become a president through an election. He became a president through the force of arms. The person who has now appointed all judges became a president not through an election. The person who is now a president and seeks to remain a president is already a solo candidate, has used those forces to terrorize the country. We are still talking about an uninvestigated massacre of the people of Kasese.
Let me open the line.
All these are matters that must be focused on if we are talk about what kind of polity that we have.
Okay, Dr. Besigye, I think I should open the line so that the people of Uganda can talk to you, and you see the numbers on the screen. Tell us what you think, and please keep it precise and concise as we continue the discussion. The phones are coming in. Last week, we saw former FDC President Major General Mugisha Muntu launching his Alliance for National Transformation Party. Some of the leaders of that party are former members of FDC, including the former Electoral Commission chairperson, Mr. Dan Mugarura. And also, I have seen the entire leadership, I think, of Kabarole, Nyakato Rusoke, and the group, all of them joining the Alliance for National Transformation. I wonder what you make of that as FDC members.
Well, first of all, what we are fighting for, the bottom line, is freedom, including freedom to associate. And freedom to associate includes freedom to disassociate. So they are perfectly in order to associate as they wish.
Okay.
What?
Could you hold on then? We'll have somebody online. Hello.
Yes, hello.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Good evening, Kamara. I'm Paulo Makanga, here in Kampala.
Makanga, you're on air, sir.
Yeah. I want to thank Dr. Chiza Besigye.
Yes.
For years broadcasting the opposition, because he's a very good man and very potential. Mr. Kamara.
Yes.
I want to advise Mr. Besigye. I'm his supporter, but this time around, we want him at least to beg the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, the Muslims, and the Orthodox also to form electoral commissions. Then they also engage in counting elections, because these elections have been rigged for so long.
You want the religious leaders to also count the votes?
Because we are his supporters, we like him. We don't want any other person whom we are talking about Munchamuntu, what and what. People of Uganda, they know what they want. That man can explain to you and understand what the country can be going on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makanga.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, so I was, before that phone call, telling you that I welcome any group that exercise their right to associate, even if they associated to oppose what I am doing. It's what we cherish. That's what we fight for. Secondly, I am glad that at least, this process of forming this party started after an election in FDC. It would have been so sad if it had started after an election that maybe was not free or fair. But the fact that the Electoral Commission who conducted the election is part of those people means that at least his views could not have been very different from those of General Muntu, and therefore the election itself could not have been rigged. And indeed, to his credit, I think General Muntu has always emphasized that the election was free and fair and that he lost it. What I have always wondered is, if he had won, what would have happened? Because he went into that election, obviously, with both possibilities at hand. If he had won, I believe he would be still our president of the party. But that, as I have said, is entirely... so I have been always, anxious to understand the dynamics of the particular basis for a new platform. And maybe as it grows, we shall understand whether there is...
What we see is that the parties that are coming, the Alliance for National Transformation, the People Power Movement that have seen it, the Forum for Democratic Change, you rarely see you fishing out or recruiting people from the NRM. And we see maybe somebody crossing from FDC to Alliance for National Transformation or to People Power. And that does not grow your membership, in my view.
No, there you are entirely wrong. Because I think, again, you are just looking at the notables, the leaders. The people down there shift in droves. Thousands, hundreds of thousands. Those people you saw who, during the campaigns, where do you think they came from? The people that voted us, where do you think they came from? Just last week, in fact, there was a function in Butevo, here in eastern Uganda, where I think 900 people with their cards shifted in a public function to FDC. The same happened in Kalilo a few weeks back. So people down there move in droves and they don't even have to announce. You know, people have been deserting. You know, you talk about your own area of Kabarore. Kabarore used to be an NRM place, but you saw Kabarore during the age-limited debate come up, you know, very strongly to say, don't tamper with our constitution. Indeed, I think 2 members of parliament of Kabarore, of NRM, voted against the age limit, saying, you know, this must end. So those who think that the population has not been shifting are missing the point entirely.
You know, the Electoral Commission has warned against early campaigns. We have seen you and FCDC President Patrick Amuriato Boy traversing the country, but we have also seen the president doing the same. And you violating the electoral laws or what the Electoral Commission chairperson is saying you shouldn't be doing. Because by all intent and purpose, what you're doing, including the president, is some form of campaign.
Well, I have told you my understanding of what the Electoral Commission is. In fact, I think the current one, the other one was like a walking stick of Mr. Museveni. I think this one is slightly worse. I think it's a handkerchief maybe in the pocket. You know, it's so my views about how they manage electoral processes are not very charitable to them. You know, this particular one was especially put in place by a defeated person, an illegitimate leader, and that makes it that much worse. But going back to your question of early campaigns or whatever, you see, influencing, the reason political parties are formed is mainly 2. One is to influence the formation of political will. That is a continuous process. It is not only influenced at the time of polls, and you can influence it in all ways. You have party meetings, you have public meetings, you have all kinds of these, and they are all legal and provided for even in the current constitution. So it is different from when you have nominated candidates. When we talk about campaign period, it is a campaign of candidates nominated. But beyond that, there must be continuous influencing of political will. And it's legitimate. The problem here is that, of course, the junta is the one which, on top of all the other advantages that it accumulates on itself, is the one which wants to be heard alone. I've never seen somebody, you know, as, you know, overt, openly unfair and shamelessly so like Mr. Museveni, you know, because to be in a situation where you are organizing a political party with campaign posters, being declared sole candidate of NRM and so on, and next door you are clobbering other citizens that they should not have even an inside building party meeting is so, you know, it should, you know, attract so much shame. You know, the other time, you know, in 2006, I was a nominated candidate in Rosira Maximum Security Prison, while Mr. Museveni was, you know, happily campaigning against me, the prisoner, you know. So that is something which we have to, and this is why I was telling you about the dialogue things and what, you know, one should focus on in terms of dialogue, that we should not just focus on improving laws and so on. We have a fundamentally defective polity that we must discuss how to get out of completely.
Okay, as we conclude, I'd like to seek your views. Parliament recently passed a 40 trillion shillings budget for the next financial year. And in this budget, the defense expenditure has raised from 2 trillion to 3.6 trillion shillings. What do you read of this increment?
Well, the whole budget, all our budgets have been focused really on regime survival, not people survival. So if the regime is more threatened, a lot of money is going to go to where the regime can be, how the regime can be protected. And there are mainly three things in which they protect the regime. One is terror, to step up terror. And I have already told you they are recruiting. They have already recruited, trained, and armed people to cause terror. That one is already going. They must pay them because they need them. And they must buy more guns and more frightening things and so on. Second, now of course there is the additional small problem. I don't know how small it is, of conflict with our neighbors in Rwanda. Secondly, there is the money to buy, to rent support, patronage, the envelopes, which you see. In fact, even before you talk about the next budget, within this budget, Mr. Museveni again demanded about 30 billion to roam around with for the remaining 4 weeks to distribute to all kinds of people, to rent their support. So that is the second. The third thing is to control information. Control information. In other words, to stop us from communicating, and also to use propaganda, hire more propagandists, do all kinds of things that will create all kinds of false impressions. Of course, including, again, renting, unfortunately, our media, our own media, and biasing it to himself. So it's not surprising that we have a budget of 40 trillion. What is interesting is that even as they do all that, they are digging their hole deeper. Because, you see, the 40 trillion they need, the people who have been totally impoverished are not going to pay the taxes. So tax collection is a huge problem. In fact, I think they anticipate to collect about 17 trillion of the 40. Even the 17, they don't know what is happening. They are basing on traders they see, but by the time they collect, they have already locked up their shops and gone back to the villages. People are getting out of business because of overtaxation, because of the poverty and the lack of effective market and so on, because of the lack of borrowing money to do business, because all the money that businessmen would be using is sacked by the government to spend. That's why interest rates are very high. That's why business cannot go on. So those who would be doing business with the expensive money and so on, they are closing. So they have nothing to tax. And what it means is that they will start printing money. Inflation will get on because they have borrowed and borrowed and borrowed, and they will not be able to borrow enough. They have to print the money. And that, in the meantime, is intensifying discontent within the people of Uganda. And it's that discontent that very soon you will see. Because don't think that all these people have been thrown out by their populations. Omar al-Bashir here in Sudan, he claimed he had won by 94% of the vote. So you wonder who then chased him. Bouteflika had claimed he had won by 81% of the vote. He's not there. So what eventually defeats them is the economy that they play around with.
Okay.
And this economy today, I've told you, people are on the wall. No fees, no food, no health care, no, and you know, then the government is you know, boasting we are making roads, but making them for who? Yes, roads are wonderful, but who? You know, when people are sick, when people have no knowledge, you have not empowered them with knowledge and skills. Who will use that infrastructure you are putting? Because even the British made the railway from Mombasa to Kasese. It was not to improve our road. It was to help the British carry away our copper, cobalt, and all other things. So even now, the roads that are being constructed, they are going to take away cheap maize that our peasants, you know, toil and grow, and they are given 100 shillings a kilo, and they drive it on their roads to go and make more money wherever, you know. So this is the whole thing that is now coming to a head. That's why we said this year is the year of action, and I can tell you, you are going to see action. What you've been seeing is just warm up.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Besigye. If you are just to give this concluding remark to that very peasant person of Uganda, to that common man that you've been trying to get to, very brief, what would you tell
maybe
them?
before I conclude my remarks, I was really touched today by the suffering of people in my village in Rukunjiri. There was a huge fire that broke out in my town. You know, that's where I was born and raised and so on, and you know, and destroyed a lot of property, and one person died, and of course, regrettably, there was no firefighting service, you know, to deal with it, and so on and so forth. So really, my sympathy to my people in the village there. I saw the suffering and so on, and but that's why you must work harder so that this year something really happens. Now, in concluding what we've been really saying, this is a wonderful, wonderful country. I have been to all continents of the world. I have not seen such a gifted country like this one. There is absolutely no reason why our people should live in the kind of misery that we live. You know, that, you know, when floods, when it rains, you see the terrible situation. I saw a picture of a family here in, I don't know whether it was in Karero or somewhere, with their chicken on top of the roof because the whole place had flooded and so on and so forth. You know, as if we don't have resources, you know, to live in the kind of terrible misery. I've told you that there is slave trade going on in Uganda. I was reading a horrifying story, in fact, in eastern Uganda, people actually openly being bought in markets to be taken to the Middle East and other places. So this must stop. It simply must stop. And happily, you know, I am extremely satisfied that the work we have been doing, yes, many people have paid a high price, some have died, some have been injured. Yesterday, quite a number of people were injured in Iganga, where he was, totally unprovoked and so on. Yes, more will be injured, some may die, but our country can no longer go back. It is on the march towards liberation, towards realization of a revolution that shifts power from gunmen to the people of Uganda. And that power, what does it control? What does it contain? Resources. It's power that controls resources. So when my brother Bobby Wine says our people will put on Ngule, the crown, yes.
Thank you.
Definitely people will put on a crown, but after a fight. Prepare yourself. Let's regain control of our country.
Thank you very much, retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye. There, he has the hope, the audacity of hope, and he thinks that things are going to change because he's believing in you. I think even some of you, perhaps, if you disagree with him or he has disagreed with you, it's because, like he said, he loves his country more. Not that because he hates you or doesn't want to be with you. But those are the views I get from his submission tonight. And thank you very much for having watched this program. On behalf of my colleagues here, good night and God bless Uganda.